Welcome to Flipped Classroom. Today's lesson is applying critical theory to film. According to the authors, a good deal of what text means depends on the perspective that readers bring with them. And text doesn't necessarily mean a book, a poem, or something written. A text can be a piece of art, a movie, or a variety of other objects that can be read. Perspective is referring to what type of lens the theorist is interpreting the work from. For example, it can be internal aspects, looking at a text's irony or coherence or paradox or symbols. But in recent years, critical theorists have spent more time looking at external aspects, such as the social, political, cultural, sexual, gender, or power struggles found in a text. Some of the main theories we've worked on this semester are New Criticism, Feminism, Psychoanalytical, Marxist, Post-colonial, New Historicism, Ethical Criticism, and Reader Response. Let's start with reviewing New Criticism. New Criticism emphasizes explication or a close reading of the work itself. In other words, you'd be looking at literary devices or film devices. Images, paradox, irony, symbols, metaphors, point of view, plot, and character. This is also the practice used in most high school interpretations when you're reading a text. The irrelevant factors are the writer's intention or personal response, social context, gender, or the era in which the text was created. So the goal of New Criticism is to judge the text by how well all the elements work together to create meaning. So using a New Criticism critical theory applied to Dark Knight Rises, you might ask yourself, what do the masks symbolizes? What are the different type of masks and which characters wear masks? Are there any events, meaning plot points, that distract from the overall meaning of the movie? What visual effects, in other words, the images, are the most powerful and add to the theme of the movie? Another approach is the feminist approach. This is looking at the role of women and the effects of gender stereotypes. According to our textbook, feminist critics uncover and challenge essential attitudes that hold it as normal for women to be kept domestic, secondary, and subservient roles. So when you're analyzing the movie, look at the characters of Miranda Tate and Catwoman. Are they portrayed in domestic roles? Are they the sidekicks or secondary? Are they subservient? And think about, as our textbook says, do these female characters affirm the values of women's experiences and perspectives, or are they presented through the male gaze? Another approach to looking at Dark Knight Rises is New Historicism. This is when you look at the work of art in context of its historical and cultural settings. You'd be asking, does this work support or condemn any historical actions? So in the case of Dark Knight Rises, you might want to ask yourself, what is the role of Wall Street in the movie? Are the police portrayed as heroes or as villains? Keeping in context of what has been happening. From what do Americans need to be saved? The movie was created in 2012, but some of the same issues are still present in 2017. And can you trust science? Why is there a nuclear bomb, nuclear power as a key element in this movie? Another approach is a psychoanalytical critic's lens. You might go back and review what is the hero's journey. Looking at the chart here, in a hero's journey, the hero has a call to action. In the beginning, the hero refuses this call, but then after meeting his or her mentor, decides to take the challenge. The hero needs to go to the underworld, cross this threshold into a darker place. In the beginning, the character will face a trial and fails. During that time, the hero will build new skills, eventually go through 3 trials. On the 3rd trial, the hero will succeed. At that point, will discard his old self and accept a new role, going back to his redemption. At the end, the hero will succeed and take a new place in the old world as he restores order. So you would want to apply that to Batman. How does he get a call to action? Who is his mentor? Where does he go into a darker place? How many times does it take him to exit the pit? What skills does he develop while he's in the pit? When he finally gets out of the pit, how does he return to Gotham as a new person? How does he restore order to Gotham? And what is his new place as Bruce by the end of the movie? Psychoanalysis also looks at motivations of characters. So think about what motivates Miranda Tate. What motivates all the main characters? Is love or hate a bigger motivation for these characters? Another approach is the ethical critics, and they look at the morality of characters and how these characters handle conflict. So a few questions you might want to ask yourself is, what type of weapons does Batman use? Or more importantly, not use? How does Bruce respond to the theft of his mother's pearls? And why does he respond in such a way? Does Miranda use ethical methods to achieve her goal? Who donates money to the boys' home? And why is that a central issue to the movie? Which characters make personal sacrifices to help others? How does the mayor and police chief respond to the crises? These are just a few ethical situations presented in the film. There's also the Marxist critics, and they look at the effects of class differences through the plot, characters, and conflict. According to Al Purdue, conflict between the classes will lead to upheaval and revolution by oppressed peoples, and form the groundwork for a new order of society and economics where capitalism is abolished. So take that quote and apply it to what you see happening in the movie. You might even ask yourself, who benefits from Bane's actions and Miranda's plan? What social classes are represented? How do characters from different social classes interact or conflict? Who are the bourgeoisie and the proletaire? What happens to capitalism? And does the revolution succeed? Another approach is the reader response criticism approach, and that's where the individual audience member, you, bring your own experience to make meaning of the work. In other words, every individual who watches this movie or reads a book or a poem or short story takes away their own unique response because we all have different backgrounds. Here's a few questions you would ask from a reader response critical approach. Do you have a unique interpretation of a specific scene in the movie based on your experience? For example, have you attended football games in large stadiums? So you find that the concept of a stadium being taken hostage either unrealistic or some other perspective? Or maybe you're a rock climber, so when you take a look at Bruce's technique to climb out of the pit, you think you have some kind of criticism on how realistic that could be. Or maybe you've traveled to New York City, and your experiences with New York City compared to watching the movie bring a specific interpretation. Does something not make sense to you in the movie because it conflicts with your personal knowledge? And how does this film compare to other films you've seen that tackle the same issues? So these are a few of the critical theory lenses you could use to interpret Dark Knight Rises. Once again, in your textbook and the other flipped classrooms, you should review Marxism, feminism, new historicism, new criticism, ethical criticism, psychoanalysis, and reader response. And of course, you should also enjoy the movie. Thank you for joining me today in Flipped Classroom.